Hi folks, welcome to RJ Impact. Sam Bankman-Fried and Caroline Ellison's spending was opulent, to say the least. Let's take a look at what the bankruptcy filings have to say about it. Where did Sam Bankman-Fried's spending money come from? Well, customers of and investors in FTX, of course. He didn't just use the money to prop up Alameda research and pay for its trading losses, it was also used on an opulent lifestyle that few of us could ever aspire to. According to the court filings, in 2022 alone, and that's only 9 months as they'd pretty much run out of money by September, they'd spent more than $40 million on company expenses alone. That's nearly $4.5 million a month. And how did they burn through this? Well, it wasn't through thrift, that's pretty obvious. They spent it on the most luxurious hotels, the finest foods, flights all around the world. Let's break it down as best we can. According to the bankruptcy documents, there was over $15 million spent on luxury hotels and accommodation. Now that includes nearly $6 million on an oceanside resort, the Albany in the Bahamas. This has its own golf course, its own marina, and in high season will cost you around $60,000 a night. And this is where SBF lived, not just in an everyday room, if there were such a thing in that kind of hotel, but in a penthouse no less. Yes, this penthouse is the one in which SBF reportedly lived with several roommates, some of whom he may or may not have been romantically involved with. Apparently this has recently been put up for sale for $40 million. FTX owned 15 other condos in the same resort for other staff, and that comes to $256 million in total just for accommodation in the Bahamas. And at the Bahamas 4-star Grand Hyatt, $2.6 million was spent on rooms, whilst a mere $800,000 was spent at the 5-star Rosewood. There's actually a tussle going on between the Bahamian authorities and the US liquidators in that the Bahamian government are looking to get the property back themselves, saying that the liquidators have no rights over the Bahamian assets because FTX in the Bahamas has no creditors in the US and has never done business there. Sam Bankman-Fried also owned property in a gated community called Old Fort Bay, and his parents, in the court documents Joseph and Barbara, are signatories to it. It's listed as a vacation home. There is more to this one than meets the eye, I think. Let's see. So that's property. What about food? Well, a spend of $7 million USD on food during the period, and this includes $2,500 meals for Sam Bankman-Fried himself, apparently he was fond of a spot called the Nassau Bistro. And to get this, if you were a staff member in the US, you'd get $200 a day for DoorDash food deliveries. If you're in the Bahamas, however, you'd get free groceries, a bi-weekly massage, a suite of cars available with all gas covered, all expenses paid trips to any of the firm's offices around the world. Let's juxtapose this with SBF's portrayal of himself to the outside world. He stated that he'd like to give all his money away. You quickly run out of things to spend it on, he said. Effective altruism was his mantra. His exact words to Bloomberg were, "You pretty quickly run out of really effective ways to make yourself happier by spending money, and I don't want a yacht." Well, guess what? He does own a yacht. According to Fox, this is a 52-foot multi-million-dollar yacht. And back to the $40 million spend, well, $4 million was spent on flights, and why is this so high? Well, apparently Amazon does not deliver to the Bahamas, and when staff realised, of course it was no problem. FTX hired private jets to fly packages from Miami to the Bahamas. I kid you not. Well, how is it possible that all this could take place? According to the bankruptcy filing, FTX and Alameda Research didn't have an accounting department, and it is actually impossible to rely on any of their financials. And how about claiming expenses? Well, staff would send a message through a messaging service, Slack, internally, and this would be approved by emojis. Marketing was another area of lavish spend. $135 million to get the naming rights on the Miami Heat basketball stadium, and no one was following this up. No one knew if they were getting a good return for their investment. We have widely heard about the $15 million paid to Kevin O'Leary, but what about Gisele Bündchen, Larry David and Tom Brady? What did they get paid on top of their promotions? And finally, there were the personal loans. We've already heard that Alameda loaned $1 billion to SBF and $543 million to Nishad Singh. So there we have it in terms of the highlights of the lavish spend that the bankruptcy documents tell us about. I think it's clear that there was a lot of hypocrisy at the heart of Sam Bankman-Fried, his FTX empire, and the ethos of effective altruism that he purportedly lived by. Well, that was a brief update. If you've enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. That would be grand. I'm currently writing a piece on Nishad Singh and what he's potentially saying to the authorities about political donations that Sam Bankman-Fried has made over the past 2 years, and whether or not that was flouting anti-campaign funding legislation. If you have subscribed, then hit the notification button and you won't miss out when it's released. Bye for now.